Little Star Club.
Disney Pixar's Monsters University.
When Mike Wazowski was 6 years old, his class took a field trip to Monsters, Inc. Scream energy to power the whole monster world was collected there. Mike secretly followed a scarer through a door into the human world. He watched as the scarer frightened a child. It was awesome. From that moment on, young Mike dreamed of being a scarer someday. Years later, Mike's dream led him to the scaring program at Monsters University, MU. Mike was excited. But at his first scaring class, Dean Hardscrabble announced that anyone who failed the final exam would be out of the scaring program. After all, not every monster was as scary as the legendary Dean Hardscrabble. Later, while Mike eagerly answered a question, another student interrupted him with a huge roar. It was James P. Sullivan, Sulley for short. Mike was annoyed. He thought the big blue monster was a show-off. Mike studied hard all semester. Sulley joined a fraternity, Roar Omega Roar, and had fun. As a result, Mike did well in class. Sulley didn't. By final exam time, Mike and Sulley didn't like each other at all. They got into a roaring face-off right before the test. That led to Sulley knocking over Dean Hardscrabble's prized Scream can and destroying it. Yikes! As punishment, Dean Hardscrabble gave Mike and Sulley their final exam on the spot, and she failed them. Although they were allowed to stay at Monsters University, they had to leave the scaring program. The Roars kicked Sulley out of their fraternity, too. Mike wouldn't give up his dream. The next semester, he joined the Uzma Kappa OK fraternity in order to enter the Scare Games, a week-long competition that would determine the scariest monsters on campus. Then he made a deal with Dean Hardscrabble. If the OK fraternity won, they would all be allowed into the scaring program. She agreed, but if the OKs lost, Mike had to leave MU. Sulley wanted in on the deal and joined the OKs too. Mike was furious. The OKs welcomed Mike and Sulley to their fraternity house. They were excited about entering the Scare Games. Unfortunately, the OKs were friendly, cute, and cuddly. They definitely did not look like scarers. During the first event, the Toxicity Challenge, Mike and Sulley were so busy competing with each other that they left their team behind. The OKs were almost eliminated. The next event, Avoid the Parent, was held in the school library. They came close to losing the event when Sulley fell off a ladder, but the rest of the OKs worked together and got the team flag. The OKs were happy, and they actually got invited to a mid-games party at the Roar fraternity house. The Roars pretended to be friendly until they dumped rainbow-colored paint, confetti, and flowers on the OKs, making them look cuter than ever. "Real scarers look like us, not like you," teased the leader of the Roars. The OKs were ready to give up, but Mike sneaked them into Monsters, Inc. for some inspiration. "See what they all have in common?" asked Mike, as they watched the scarers at work. "Not really," a pink monster named Squishy answered. "Exactly," exclaimed Mike. Now the OKs could see that scarers came in all shapes and sizes, and Mike and Sulley realized they had to start working as a team. Mike started training the OKs every day. He was a great coach. The OKs passed the next 2 Scare Games events. This meant that they were going to the finals with the Roars. But the night before the finals, Sulley was worried. Mike knew everything about scaring, but he just wasn't scary. So Sulley gave Mike some last-minute lessons. Mike felt confident, but Sulley still had his doubts. The next day at the final event, each member of the OKs and Roars had to enter a scare simulator and perform a scare on a robot child. The first 4 OK members did well, But after 4 rounds, they were still far behind the roars. That meant Mike and Sulley would have to get big scores for the OKs to win. Sulley earned a great score. Now it was up to Mike. He gave the most heartfelt roar of his life. The robot child let out an enormous scream. The OKs won the scare games. Later, Mike discovered that Sulley had cheated. He had changed Mike's setting on the simulator from hard to easy. "You don't think I'm scary," Mike said to Sulley. He felt hurt and let down, and so did the OKs. Mike decided to prove that he really was scary. He sneaked into the door tech lab, powered up a door to the human world, and walked through it. An alarm blared across campus. What Mike was doing was very dangerous. Inside the human child's room, Mike crept up to a youngster's bed, leaped up, and roared as loudly as he could. The child sat up in bed and smiled. "You're funny," she said. Mike suddenly felt many eyes watching him. He wasn't in a bedroom. He was in a cabin full of campers. Meanwhile, Sulley guessed what Mike was up to and ran to the lab. When Sulley got inside, Dean Hardscrabble was holding back a crowd. The OKs distracted the guards so that Sulley could slip through the door and rescue Mike. When Sulley entered the cabin, it was empty. Then he spotted an open window and suspected that Mike had escaped through it. Sulley found Mike sitting by a lake. "You were right," Mike told him. "They weren't scared of me." "You aren't the only failure here," Sulley admitted, explaining he had messed things up his entire life. Suddenly, rangers appeared. There was no time to lose. Mike and Sulley raced back to the cabin to return to Monsters University. There was just one problem. Hardscrabble had powered down the door. Mike and Sulley were trapped. Then Mike had an idea. If they could really scare the rangers, they might create enough scream energy to power the door back up. When the rangers entered the cabin, Mike and Sulley set up their big scare. They clawed the walls, fluttered the curtains, slammed the door, and toppled over the bunk beds. Then, on Mike's cue, Sulley leaped out with a ferocious roar. The rangers screamed and screamed as the huge blue monster loomed over them. In the lab, Hardscrabble watched in disbelief as Mike and Sulley exploded through the door. "How did you do this?" Hardscrabble asked, amazed. Just then, agents from the Child Detection Agency burst into the room. They led Mike and Sulley away. Because Mike and Sulley had broken so many rules, they were kicked out of Monsters University. However, Dean Hardscrabble allowed the rest of the OKs into the scaring program for their great performance in the scare games. Before Mike and Sulley left MU, Mike had seen an ad for mailroom workers at Monsters, Inc. They got the jobs and quickly moved up in the company. After years of hard work, Mike and Sulley became the first scare team at Monsters, Inc. "You coming, Coach?" asked Sulley, as they walked onto a scare floor their first day on the job. Mike smiled. "You bet I am." Mike was finally where he belonged. He was working on a scare floor doing a job he loved with his best friend. It really was a dream come true.
Please subscribe for more.